A little bit of history. The British Library, the National Libraries of Scotland and Wales began archiving the UK web since 2004. Initially on a small-scale selective basis, so we had subject specialists who were selecting individual websites within their areas of interest on a permission-cleared basis. But since 2013, the 6 UK legal deposit libraries under the banner of the UK Web Archive have been archiving the UK web at scale under the terms of the regulations, the non-print legal deposit regulations. So this was an extension in 2013 of print legal deposit regulations. So in 2013, we were able to archive UK websites, e-journals, e-books, everything considered published on the web. Additionally, we hold a data set of .uk websites from the Internet Archive from 1996 to 2013. Non-print legal deposit regulations. So if, as a researcher, you're approaching our data set, I'm afraid there's quite a bit to engage with to understand the provenance of the data set. So this really is the most essential starting point. We carry out web archiving under the terms of the regulations. And the regulations enable the libraries to archive online works published in the UK. The legislation then puts a bit more definition of what we consider a published work and what we mean by UK. So we have this kind of artificial construct of imposing this UK territoriality on the web. In practice, we automate this in that we can automatically scope in websites that sit on a UK top-level domain name .uk, .scot, .cymru, or we can target a website that's hosted on a server physically located in the UK with a GeoIP lookup. There are some things that are specifically excluded from the legislation, and these are those sites that constitute an audio-visual channel, for example, YouTube or BBC iPlayer. So we can't archive these channels, but we can archive a website where a YouTube video or an audio file is incidental to the website, and there is a specific piece of text that describes what we mean by the incidental occurrence of a video or an audio file on a website. We don't archive private intranets, emails. This kind of private material is out of scope. Content that is not considered published. Now, you can already see here that this is a little bit subjective, as Richard was talking about earlier. What we consider published on the internet, particularly if we're thinking about social media, doesn't really have a nice legal definition that we can follow. So we're sort of navigating this territory of, well, did this person publishing this onto their social media account consider that it was published? Did they think that the UK legal deposit libraries were going to be so interested in it that they were going to be preserving it for perpetuity? And then researchers were going to be looking at it. All of these sorts of issues are slightly uncharted. But because we, the libraries, have this protection in the form of the legislation, so protection from copyright, protection from defamation. We have some exclusions under GDPR because of the regulations. We must ensure that we're working within them, and one of the main stipulations is that we can't provide open access to this data set. So it's reading room access only, which means that as a researcher, you're going to have to travel to one of the 6 reading rooms to access the full collection, although we do make as much available as we possibly can online, but this is with the permission of the rights holders. So our collection policy pretty much hangs off the regulations, and our key collecting principles are that we collect without filtering. So as much as we can do, we don't pre-select or filter. We try to be comprehensive, inclusive, as representative as we possibly can. As far as we're technically and practically able to be within the legislation and within the limits of the crawling technology. But you'll be understanding that these limitations mean that when we're doing our large-scale crawls, it's a challenge for us to archive the UK web comprehensively or even truly representatively. For example, we automatically scope in top-level UK domain names, but most of what we're interested might sit on a .com top-level domain name, particularly social media. A lot of this content is on servers in the US, in San Francisco, in Ireland, in Germany. So it means that there are big gaps in our collection unless we manually identify the content that we're interested in. And in terms of the technical factors, the web crawler that we use is geared up for bulk automated crawls, and it performs very well in this respect. But it's not optimized for high fidelity crawling of very dynamic and complex websites such as social media. There's a significant cost in archiving websites, and so for this reason we cap our domains at 500 megabytes. So the majority of websites are scoped in their entirety, but there are a lot of large websites that we miss. Robots text protocol, we ignore this at the level of the homepage, but we respect robots exclusions further into a website. So all of this is to say that our large data set, it's potentially missing important resources, and there's significant gaps in the collection. So I'm just making the case that this is kind of the information that the researcher needs to be armed with when coming to our data set. So to augment these broad annual domain crawls, we undertake additional selection strategies to try to at least in some way address these gaps. And we have an online curation tool which we open up to as many users as we can across the legal deposit libraries and externally, so that we increase inclusivity, we increase representation. We try to onboard curators, and I mean curators in the sense of the role that they're playing in our archive. We tend to include as widely as we possibly can do. So this online tool allows the users to scope in content that we're not necessarily picking up as part of our automated crawls. It allows the user to select content that they might want to visit more frequently, in more in depth. We can add metadata, so we can build collections and add titles, perform quality assurance, and also apply for open access to selected websites. And the future value, I think, of this data set, so the administrative side of the tool, is that it hopefully informs our selection policy. So what were we considering important at the time? So our curators represent different business areas across the legal deposit libraries, different collection areas. Other partners that we work with, different libraries and archives and museums that don't necessarily have the infrastructure to perform web archiving themselves, but have the subject expertise in areas that we don't have. Most recently, we've been talking to the Wimbledon Lawn Tennis Association, so we had a very interesting visit there. Online news, for example, is a massively important collection, and so for this reason we target online news sites. We have several thousand titles that we revisit on a daily, weekly or monthly basis. So we undertake various types of what we call special collection or curated collection, and these are undertaken, for example, in response to political events. So for example, we've been doing quite a bit of work on Brexit. We started collecting around the UK referendum on departure from the European Union. We then were collecting around Brexit. So we have researcher-led collections, so we work with academics who have their own areas of expertise. For example, we worked with Muslims Trust and Cultural Dialogue project, and we also operate so-called rapid response collections in response to unfolding events. I'm going to quickly talk about our tools and technologies. So we operate with the Heritrix crawler framework. So this was written by the Internet Archive and continues to be developed by a community of web archiving technologists. This is the state-of-the-art bulk web crawler. As I say, it performs very well at scale, but not particularly well with complex websites. When we're approaching our domain scale crawl, we take a list of starting seeds, and this is provided by Nominet, the UK domain name registry. The seeds are provided by our curators via the annotation software, and it's also informed by those seeds that in the past we've identified. So a web crawler follows links, identifies everything that's in scope, so we've set the parameters to only collect UK content, and it continues to follow these links until it's exhausted. This takes about 3 months, and it will return 10 million hosts. It will return 2 billion items, so that's HTML pages, images, documents, scripts, audio, visual files. And this is 70 or 100 terabytes of compressed data. It is over half a petabyte of compressed data that we hold at the moment. So that concludes my whistle-stop tour.